Showtime, ladies and gentlemen. Not streaming on Twitter because the technocracy is suspect right as I blow up. Really a shame, really a shame. Unfortunate to my Twitter folks who get the live streams there. But we are on Rockfin. So please check out my Rockfin page. That is where I'm sending people to watch videos. This is Addy Ads, your intelligence officer for the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, author, best-selling ghostwriter, reporter from the American Midwest. Week 3, Ghislaine Maxwell trial. The defense has already rested, and that is surprising. I think that, to say the least, the rate at which this trial is proceeding. We were expecting 6 weeks, mid-January, and my prediction I made on Monday looks like is coming to fruition. We will more than likely be concluded by Christmas Day, Christmas Eve day. But it's not guaranteed because the biggest variable in this equation, in terms of degree of variability, is, of course, the jury. Don't know if they're going to be sequestered or not over Christmas break. You would think that they won't want to do that and they'd rather be done with this and get home to their families. But is the SDNY playing a cruel joke on the people of the United States of America by acquitting Ghislaine Maxwell of all charges on her birthday, which is the 25th of December, in case you didn't know? But I was the first one to get this out, as far as I know. Correct me if I'm wrong, and sometimes I am wrong, which I always own up to. Quote from Ghislaine Maxwell, the only words we've heard from her so far this trial. The government has not proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt, and so there's no need for me to testify. And I was told this actually happened when the jury had already left the room, so that should be noted. But at the end of the day, there was oral and written statements for evidence. This is yesterday. Pretty basic stuff. Admittance, metadata, and logistical witness testimony. For example, the Palm Beach school records for Virginia Roberts and Kate. Eva Anderson Dubin was examined and cross-examined yesterday as well. And witness Michelle Healy, who was receptionist for Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, was also examined. But very interesting quote from Eva Dubin. It's very hard to remember anything far back, and sometimes I can't even remember days from last month. My family notices it, I notice it, and it's an issue. And as I mentioned, witness Michelle Healy, who was examined by Menninger, worked for J. Epstein and Company from 1996 onwards. Got some quotes there as well. Were you ever involved in any group sexualized massages with Jane? Were you ever involved in any group sexualized massages with Jeffrey Epstein? Both answers were absolutely not from Michelle Healy. Hello to those checking in from Washington. We also had witness FBI Special Agent Jason Richards and case agent Amanda Young to discuss the 302 document, standard FBI report form. Defense doing a decent job pointing out the fact that questions and interviews upon which the 302s are based are not recorded in any way, but are a summary, with the implication being human error is present or can be present, certainly, with no verified verbatim logging, also implying a lack of verifiable accuracy, meaning the FBI agents who record summaries of interviews can obviously make mistakes, right? That's being very giving them the benefit of the doubt there as far as possible purposeful misrecordings go, or non-recordings, right? Harvey Weinstein was brought up by the prosecution when their star witness, the defense's star witness, Elizabeth Loftus, was being cross-examined. And, we've gone over before the litany of villains that she has testified in defense of, or at least on behalf of, as a witness for the defense. And Bobby Sternheim examined Loftus, lauding her 47-page CV, accomplishments, and experience in an effort to make her seem as credible as possible. Her book, called Witness for the Defense, was brought up in Laura Pomerantz's cross-examination. Cheeky job by her there, asking her if she also has a book entitled Impartial Witness, to which she responded, "No, I do not have a book by that title." Quotes from Elizabeth Loftus: "Emotion is no guarantee you're dealing with a real memory." She discussed inferences via autosuggestion. Her clients included the FBI, CIA, Department of Justice, IRS, and Security Service, with 600 plus articles and 20 books written. She talked about the misinformation effect, assimilated memory as well. Also testifying for the defense was an executive assistant named Kimberly Espinoza, and she worked for Epstein for about a month before being hired, or basically working directly for Ghislaine Maxwell. So if Epstein was the boss, why is Kimberly Espinoza working for Ghislaine Maxwell just a few days after she gets hired by Epstein? That's a little confusing to me, but of course I contend that Ghislaine, in fact, had the seniority in the relationship there. On the first day, Thursday, just getting into a bit more details here, as I conclude up my general overview, closing arguments are going to be Monday, and they're staying till 6, so an hour later than usual. And yesterday, on Friday, we actually got out an hour earlier than usual, which worked great for me logistically because I was on Lee Stranahan's and John Kiriaku's radio show, The Backstory, once again, and they're on YouTube too. So I encourage people or invite them to go and subscribe to those guys. They've done timeless work, to say the least. And they were discussing a deposition in 2019 in the morning on Thursday, done of Ghislaine Maxwell. And the dispute was whether she was living at a property in 1992 or simply owning it. And Christian Everdale was arguing this for the defense. And they argued this for a good 45 minutes. With the residence in question being 44 Kitterton Street in London, United Kingdom, with Nathan suggesting stipulation for timing of the ownership. Again, Loftus was the star witness there, but right away on Thursday was news that one of the defense witnesses has COVID and therefore couldn't show up. Interesting excuse there. I don't know why they couldn't do that remotely, but that may happen on Monday. I'm not sure. A witness, again, was Kimberly Espinoza. Stipulation included the fact that this shouldn't include any information about a prior civil suit against Ghislaine Maxwell. Photographs were admitted as evidence of the soap opera that Jane was on. Witness, again, Kimberly Espinoza. She lives in California. She's 55 years old, just 1.5 years of college. Very successful, I would say, for someone just 1.5 years of college. Executive assistant to a CEO of a global company for some decade or so. She was 28 years old in 1996, according to her, living in Midtown after living in the Upper East Side in New York City. She was hired by Jeffrey Epstein before or after being interviewed by Jeff Shantz and Epstein's longtime lawyer, Darren Endyke, as well as a legal assistant. She found the job via an ad in the newspaper, which I found surprising. And before Epstein's interview and after Shantz and Endyke's, she was interviewed by Ghislaine Maxwell in the back of a limo while being driven around Manhattan. She later started working for Maxwell, as I said, as an assistant just 1 month later, a position which she held for 6 years from approximately November 1996 to the summer of 2002. All the work being done out of their 457 Madison Avenue office, which I'm actually going to try to get to later today. Again, pardon me, but I couldn't be at court today. It's not an official court day. They are doing a charging conference, I believe is the title of it. I do have someone who I'm in touch with who's there. The reason I couldn't be there is because my host asked me to help him with something as he is on vacation for winter break. So he's hosting me for free. I didn't want to tell him no. I didn't feel like that was appropriate. So I couldn't be there today. But we're going to get an update from our friend who's on the ground there later. It may not be a whole lot, maybe just a lot of logistical, legal jargon, but not something I want to ignore. So we'll check that out later. Kimberly Espinoza looked up to Ghislaine Maxwell. She learned a lot about high volume work. She felt that she was treated fairly by Ghislaine. Contact after her term of work included those 6 years, birthdays and holidays, so occasional phone calls. Typical working hours are 9:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. She was rarely at Maxwell's house. Names mentioned were Eric Gainey, Amanda Milroy, and Harry Geller, as well as Maureen, assistant to Epstein, and then receptionist Sue-Ann Pizak and Leslie Groff. There's that name coming up again. Michelle Healy as well, who testified later in the week, and Helen Kim, and Lauren Whitmer. They all had to sign non-disclosure agreements when their period of employment was concluded with Epstein. She helped finish buildings on the island, including bringing sand and palm trees in. And I didn't know this, but they, on Epstein's Island, they actually had a fire department with firemen. Well, so pretty ridiculous. Her other duties include making sure that all of Epstein's properties were properly stocked with his favorite bread and food from New York. She scheduled some 5 to 10 massages in 6 years with Lydia and Monica, who are professional masseuses, as well as Sophie Biddle. She gave Sophie Biddle, who gave a massage to both to Ghislaine Maxwell as well, and never to Epstein, to her knowledge. She never saw Maxwell or Epstein commit crimes, nor had any impression that they were doing so. Kimberly Espinoza was cross-examined by Laura Pomerantz for the prosecution. Espinoza saying she never went to any of Epstein's properties, other than the New York one, I believe. Pardon, that was Healy. She went there to just drop off some mail. Raga Sood was also on the stand. He's from Eastminster, New Jersey, vice president of Shoppers Travel, which is a travel agency, a position which he has held since 1988. That was pretty basic witness testimony. They went over invoice info from the Jeffrey Epstein Company, which was admitted temporarily under seal. Cross-examined very briefly by Allison Moe for the prosecution as well. 1996 to 2006. Sood had Jeffrey Epstein as a client for his travel agency. And the next was, of course, the star witness, Elizabeth Loftus, who was examined by Bobby Sternheim. They talked about the human memory study, and she works as a scientist and professor in false memory science, and I guess it's neurobiology, you could call it, and psychology, but principally psychology. Professor at UC Irvine at their psychological and criminology departments, and also faculty at a law school. Before, she was at University of Washington, Seattle. She holds a bachelor's in mathematics and psychology at UCLA before getting her master's and PhD at Stanford University. She has been inducted into the National Academy of Sciences. Again, I mentioned DOJ, FBI, IRS, SS, among her consultees in the past. They discuss the misinformation memory effect, assimilated memory, false memory plants, and emotions, stating that emotion is no guarantee that you're dealing with a real memory. Once again, I said it first week, attacking the memories, right? They discussed inferences via autosuggestion, the acquisition, retention, and retrieval process as it pertains to memories, post-event contamination as well. Loftus, again, was cross-examined by Pomerantz, who brought up her witness for the defense book, asking if she has a book entitled Impartial Witness, quote, note, I don't have a book by that title. Advocate for the defense was cited on page 238. Should you be an advocate for the defense or an impartial educator? My answer to that question, to be completely honest, is both, said Elizabeth Loftus in her book on page 238. And Pomerantz asks, this has helped to raise your public profile, right? Objection by Sternheim came there. That was overruled by Judge Nathan. And she also asked, you use your testimony from trials to market yourself, right? And you could see Loftus kind of squirming there when Pomerantz was asking her about those connections. She has honorary Israeli, British degrees, and a Norwegian degree as well from Oslo, honorary degrees. And as I mentioned, a sidebar was immediately called by Judge Nathan after Weinstein was mentioned, and no past trial participation by Elizabeth Loftus was again mentioned after that sidebar. And also brought up, which I thought was fair by the prosecution, that no perjury penalty is present for participants in experiments, research experiments who lie. And one experiment that mentioned Bugs Bunny was brought up, I think, as a tactic by the prosecution to kind of make her work seem ridiculous, which I don't necessarily contend that it is. It's just that the nature of her work has made it such that criminal defenses often try to make use of her to discredit allegations by plaintiffs, right? So also mentioned was a study about people's resistance to blatant lies, which I thought was good as well, using her own past work against her testimony for the defense. Also brought up was the fact that post-event contamination is more likely to occur in children 6 years old and under. Also brought up, you've never done a study about teenage girls being sexually abused, correct? Was the quote I had. And Sternheim brought up the fact she would testify for the prosecution in her redirect, which was pretty brief. And next for the defense was a U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent. I still didn't get his last name, so I'm going to look that up on the transcript. But his first name was Michael. 3 names are under seal, and the ones listed were, of course, Jane, Kate, and then Annie Farmer. They got their border crossing record, either leaving or coming into the country on international flights. Examining the flight dates and birth dates to prove no international flights of minors. At least that's what I thought at first, but on one flight there was, one of them was 16. And we were discussing this amongst ourselves in the overflow courtroom with one guy, contending that the client was buried by it. But, it was brought up that it's not illegal for children to fly alone, right? Although it may be indicative of something more nefarious going on there. Once again, the Customs and Border Patrol agent or protection agent was cross-examined by Pomerantz. Pomerantz did a good job of bringing up the fact that pre-9/11 data logging of records was much less diligent, strict, and in fact was not mandatory in the sense that airlines didn't have to submit their flight manifests. They now are required to do so. But back in the 90s, again, pre 9/11, they were not. So I thought Menninger did, I thought Pomerantz actually did a pretty decent job this week, at least Thursday. I thought she did. So I do want to point that out. And next on the stand, I remember it was 8 minutes left in the day at the end of the day. People were starting to get up. Everyone's tired and wants to go home. And Judge Nathan just keeps on trucking. Next witness. And there was only like 8 minutes of this witness, which was fortunate because, his accent was very difficult to understand. The stenographer had to stop him, I think, 3 times in 8 minutes for him to repeat certain words. All of us were having trouble understanding him. Not that makes him a bad person, but that was just the reality of the situation. He is a data processor who processes subpoenas of school records, talking about files being kept electronically. And this is for West Palm Beach, which I mentioned briefly before. Witness Special Agent Jason Richards was examined by Paula Yuka on Friday, FBI agent for 18 years, working out of Palm Beach. And in 2007, he was working with one Agent Kirkendall. They went over notes from the interview, which turns into, of course, a 302 document, the standard FBI report form. On the 7th of August 2007, he spoke with Caroline, saying that Epstein returned her call, possibly showing voluntary interaction or reaching out to Epstein on Caroline's behalf by the defense as an effort to show that she's not being coerced, perhaps. Cross-examined by Comey, and Comey, I thought, did a decent job here, I have to say as well, stating that, or pointing out that the 302 is not a transcript, it's not verbatim. The redirect was by Paula Yuka. And all we got out of that's worth, I think, any salt was Richards saying he does the best to tell the truth. Next was witness Amanda Young, FBI case agent assigned at the end of 2018. She was examined by Menninger. She agrees with Jason Richards, who was the previous special agent, again bringing up that 302s are not transcripts. And what the witness said, but a summary. Questions asked are not recorded. There is no audio or video recording of the interview. And they went over a few citations in the interview when interactions between Jane and Maxwell, as well as a November 2019 interview. Again, going over some interactions with Ghislaine Maxwell. Quote, fairly early on, Maxwell joined in and started taking her clothes off. Jane was still 14 at this time. Jane does not have a specific memory of the first time. Quote, when Jane was asked if it was only Epstein, Maxwell, and her in the room, she was not sure. It would go back and forth from being solely with Jeffrey Epstein to the group setting. Jane, did not recall specific abuse that may have occurred. Jane was not sure of specific abuse that happened in New Mexico. Her first trip to New York was just to go and have fun. Jane met Epstein when she moved to Florida, as well as the 302 interview with Annie Farmer. That was also covered. Next was a child adolescent forensic interviewer who conducts interviews with children and child abuse allegations. I'm sorry, that's what she does, Agent Young. Same witness here, folks. Also brought up was using selected interviews in grand juries, which is a great point. A grand jury is one of the easiest contexts with which justice can be thwarted, as in the case of the Epstein saga or the Franklin Network as well. Due to the fact that the special prosecutor has something called prosecutorial discretion, whereby they are able to exclude or include evidence solely at their own discretion to show to the jury. It's a limited hangout in that sense, and very easy to sway the jury to, acquit or convict, depending on the special prosecutor's whims. Very easy to do. And the star witness, I would say, for Friday, again, was Eva Anderson Dubin. New York City is her home base. She's 60 years old, 28 years married with 3 children, a 27-year-old, a 25-year-old, and a 20-year-old, 2 daughters, and 1 son. Again, there was a sidebar after Weinstein was mentioned in Loftus's. I just want to be sure people got that out. But as far as Miss Dubin, she's an ex-medical doctor, licensed in New York City, formerly went to school at some institute in Stockholm and UCLA Medical School, had an internal medicine residency at Lenox Hospital in New York City, dated Jeffrey Epstein on and off from 1983 to 1991. She remained friends with Epstein and thereafter maintained regular contact with him. She could not recall if she traveled without Epstein on his plane, but her and her family would travel on Epstein's plane somewhat regularly. She married Glenn Dubin in 1994 on her birthday. Epstein knew her children, and she asserts they were comfortable with his relationship with them, both parties being fond of each other. His nickname was Uncle F by the children. She also asserted she never observed inappropriate conduct between Epstein and underage females. Government Exhibit 241 was already admitted under seal and is shown. We didn't get to see it, unfortunately, but it was a picture she had never seen before of Epstein and her daughter, and a second one also of Epstein and her other daughter, both pictures of which she had never seen before. The third photo was a person she did not recognize and could not recall, even when she saw the flight records in the media, saying, quote, "I saw that the media had copied the flight book incorrectly." Right. And, I want to point this out. It was brought up, the fact that she said, uh, it's very hard to remember anything far back. And sometimes I can't even remember days from last month. My family notices it, I notice it, and it's an issue. And that, I believe, was during the cross examination. So I think that's a great point for the prosecution there, but it also is maybe some self preservation, uh, you know, instinct there by Eva Dubin, although they didn't explicitly say why she has memory problems. So it could be early onset dementia, even though she's only 60. Speaking on Epstein and Maxwell's relationship, she said it's hard to define the relationship, but they were living in the same house. And during Allison Moe's cross examination of Dubin, Paul Yuka made it very hard on her, objecting several times. Most of them were actually sustained by Judge Nathan. Nonetheless, I thought Moe did a decent job bringing up that memory issue for her. But again, they didn't explain why that is. The next witness was Michelle Healy. And I do want to say, just to bring up Eva Dubin again, that she was asked about group sexual encounters and group sexualized massages. Absolutely not, was the answer once again. Have you ever been in a group sexual encounter with the person we are calling Jane? Absolutely not, she said. Although Eva did recognize the name Sophie Biddle as being a masseuse, and Jeff Shantz as well, although she couldn't remember what he did. So again, next witness is Michelle Healy, who was examined by Laura Menninger. She's 47 years old, based in Dallas, Texas, currently married, a housewife to an architect who works principally in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Her sister Shannon lives in Albuquerque as well. She was born and raised in Long Island, New York, where she lived from 1974 to 1999. She worked at J. Epstein and Company from 1996 onwards, as well as her sister, working at the 457 Madison Avenue office, which again, I'm going to be getting to later today, barring anything preventing me. She was there just 3 years before going to New Mexico. That is her sister. And Michelle Healy was a receptionist who ran errands and also occasionally acted as a personal assistant to Epstein. She identified Maxwell in the courtroom and described her jobs for Maxwell, saying she reported to both Epstein and Maxwell. Again, kind of lauding her praises a bit. She taught me a lot. I respected her. She was tough, but she was great. Her sister worked on the ranch in New Mexico. And during that time period when she was working there, she got into a car accident. And that was the only time Michelle testified under oath that she ever went to an Epstein property, with one exception being her dropping off mail once at his 9 East 71st Street townhouse address. Miss Healy met Emmy Taylor, who had a British accent. She met Jane in the office, and she wouldn't see much of Jane, although occasionally, if she did, it was at the office. Again, she was asked, "Were you ever involved in any group sexualized massages with Jane or with Jeffrey Epstein?" "Absolutely not," she answered to both. She also testified she was contacted by the FBI within the last week to discuss the case. Miss Healy was cross-examined by Maureen Comey, and that was relatively short. "Are you the only Michelle in the world?" She said, "I hope not." Also saying she doesn't know of any masseuses named Michelle. She had never been to any property but New Mexico and New York, as I mentioned, to drop off some documents. They then went over stipulations, with the government revealing they actually had previously requested an arrest warrant for a particular witness. I believe it's Kelly Bodina. Don't quote me on that. I couldn't get the name. They only say him once, and if and it's kind of hard to hear sometimes. Uh, an arrest warrant by the marshals, but that was withdrawn as the government, I guess, or withdrew her request to be a witness. And again, Ghislaine had her quote: "The government has not proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt, and there's no need for me to testify." Some of the stipulations were basically metadata on evidence, like Annie Farmer's boots being seized on the 29th of this year in June by the FBI, Mike Wallace's birthday being the 9th of May, 1918, The Lion King's opening and preview dates in 1997, Kate attending a meeting on the 3rd of September of this year with the prosecution in this case, where she was provided a new visa uh, appointment and also discussed her visa status. The man with the accent, Mr. Dominique, I can't remember his last name at this moment, testified testimony about the Palm Beach school and maintenance of the records there. HM Land Registry, just going back to that debate over whether Maxwell owned or when she started living at that property. And that was pretty much it before adjourning at about 4 p.m. or so. It was maybe a little bit after 4 p.m. Right now is that court charging conference. And again, I had to help my host out with something, so that's why I'm not there. But I do have some sources there, people I've met over the course of this trial, and definitely going to get that update, as well as go do some infield stuff today in the city. So, and tomorrow too, I'm going to go to the UN. So that should be good. Great work, Eddie. Glad I found you on Sam Tripoli and Rockfin. Appreciate you. Appreciate Sam Tripoli for having me on his show. And I'm actually going to be on Reed Coverdale tonight, I believe. I'll have to double check on that. Will we ever get any justice? I don't know, folks. That's what I'm saying. Are they trying to troll us by acquitting Ghislaine Maxwell on her birthday? We shall see. We shall see indeed. But stay frosty, guys. I'm going to be putting this up on my Spreaker, which is my podcast. And please give me a subscription on Rockfin and Twitter. Much appreciated for that. If you guys want to help out with a brief or quick, low-cost sponsorship, you can buy me a coffee in the link below, or you can do Venmo or Cash App. I try not to do PayPal because they skim off the top, whereas Venmo and Cash App, I get the entirety of what people wish to donate, whether it's $1 or $250, which sometimes people are that generous. But even $1 really helps, folks. $2, $5, whatever you can help out with is much appreciated. If not, just sharing this out. So, all right, guys, we'll see everybody next time. Stay frosty.